أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين وأبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. صلوات بيج محمد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I recited the ayah from the Holy Quran, which also reflects on the concept of adopting the taqwa, although the discussion has been under the sermon number 193 from Nahj-ul-Balagha, and because there's the habit of beginning our khutbah with kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which I did not do in the previous 2 nights. I was not mindful, and therefore I just came on my mind, or came on my tongue, فَقَدْ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى. So while I recited فَقَدْ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى, I chose this ayah which also talks about the concept of taqwa. But no, we have not digressed from the discussion that we had in the first 2 nights, and inshallah we will be continuing with that series in which thus far I have been able to cover first 5 attributes that Amirul Mu'mineen covers or talks about as far as the attributes of the pious are concerned. And when I was looking at this discussion and this topic, and as I was researching it myself, I figured that 12 nights will not be enough to cover all of the 110 attributes that Amirul Mu'mineen counts. Therefore, there would be need of some consolidation from the topics or the attributes that Imam has mentioned in these 110. And just to make my life a little bit more difficult, what I'll do is I'll bring those attributes that are close as far as the subject is concerned and deliver them together. In that way, inshallah, we'll be able to get the gist of the entire khutbah number 193, because there is no way without going into some sort of explanation and without explaining some of the words of Maulana Muttaqiyan, which are not obviously my interpretations. These are the interpretations of the greatest commentators of Nahj-ul-Balagha. It will not serve justice just to go ahead and read these attributes that Amirul Mu'mineen has associated with those who are the pious. So therefore, if you remember last night, we spoke about the initial first attributes that Imam counts, that he says that those who are muttaqeen hum ahlul fada'il. These are the people who are sahibe fazilat. They are not ordinary individuals. They have virtues on their own. And because of this concept of taqwa which is associated with them. And then Imam talks about some of their physical attributes that you can relate to and you can understand and you can easily associate with yourself and see where do we stand as far as those attributes are concerned. So Imam spoke, وَمَنْطِقُهُمُ الصَّوَابِ, that their speech is errorless, that when they speak, when they open up their mouth, you don't find any falsehood in it. You don't find any lapses in it. In fact, their speech is to the ma'ar of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set in His holy book. And we went in the details of the discussion of the tongue and the usage of the tongue and afatul lisan, the calamities of the tongue. And it's a very, very vast chapter, which I, just only touched upon it briefly, because if I go in further details, it could become a bit dry and boring. But nonetheless, we wanted to just highlight some impact of it, some, association with it, so that you and I can relate to it better. And then Imam went on to speak about malbisuhumul iqtisad, that muttaqeen are those that their libas is in moderation. And this concept of moderation is actually, if you look at it, runs in all aspects of our lives. That we should not ever leave the path of moderation. When it comes to, your work habit, when it comes to your, life at home, when it comes to, eating, when it comes to exercise, when it comes to all of the things that you do in your daily lives, moderation is something which we are always told to remember and keep intact. Therefore, when it comes to moderation, even when it comes to bravery, one should be moderate. Sometimes too much of the bravery could lead to, the devastation, and therefore it has to be in moderation. Same thing goes with ibadat. Ibadat should also be in moderation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create you only that you are round the clock working and doing His ibadat, things which are associated as ibadat. But you could, if you were to give all of your actions sibghatullah, the color of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then everything becomes an ibadat. Whatever it is that you perform becomes an ibadat. And that's why when a person asked Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, in reference to his ibadat, as if he has seen, Hal ra'ayta rabbaka, have you seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Imam responded, Lam abud rabban lam ara, I do not worship the God that I have not seen. And obviously Imam was not talking about the physical eyes and seeing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through them. Rather, he was speaking about the eyes of his heart through the shuhud and observation that he has seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Ma ra'aytu shay'an illa wa ra'aytu Allah qablahu wa ba'dahu wa ma'ahu, that I have not seen anything except that I see Allah before it, after it, and with it. Therefore, any action that you perform, if you have God in your perspective before, after, and with it, then itself becomes an ibadah. So we have limited the concept of ibadah to be only those few things that are part of our furu' deen. No, everything that has the color of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this majlis azad that you come and sit is an ibadat as well, because we are performing it with the niyat and with the khulus of ibadat, and that's where the greatest of the ajr and the reward also lies. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands in Quran, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى, that, O Prophet, tell them that I do not ask anything from you except what? Except mawaddat, for my loved ones, the love for my closest family members. And that one of the misdaq of that mawaddat is, holding these majalis aza. That when you have this majlis aza, when you have jashan, when you have mahafil in the name of ma'asumeen, that is one way of showing that ajr risala. That's one way of displaying that demand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what has been asked in that ayah or in the other ayat. Therefore, with this small, short muqaddimah, I wanted to get right into the discussion that that Amir al-Mu'mineen here says, وَمَلْبِسُهُمُ الْإِقْتِصَادِ. Muttaqeen are those that their libas, their, garments, what they wear is also in moderation. That it does not reflect on the concept of something which is leaving the two ends, when you look at the moderation aspect, something which is right in the middle. And therefore you look at the word libas has been used in Quran in different ways and forms. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at least on 3 different occasions, has used the word libas for something else. For example, وَجَعَلْنَا الْلَيْلَ libasa, that we made night libas for you. And it's very easy to understand, and I alluded to it last night as well, without going in the explanation because I kept it for tonight, that how night could be libas. For Ahl Fahm, they understand that night means dark. As you turn the lights off outside and it's dark. Now in darkness there are a lot of things that are hidden. Things become, you can't see them because obviously our eyesight requires this nur, this reflection, so that you and I are able to see one another. And therefore, when that nur is not there, then you and I will not be able to see anything. And therefore, darkness, which is associated with nighttime, serves as a libas. Therefore, a lot of things are mentioned to be done only at nighttime so that it is hidden and kept secret from the eyes of others. And therefore, libas is referred to as night in Quran as well. Also, on another occasion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in fact calls taqwa to be libas as well. وَلِبَاسُ التَّقْوَى ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ. That the garment and the libas of piety is the best of the libas. So you say, well, why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considering libas to be taqwa itself? Because what does taqwa do? It protects you. It safeguards you. And that's what the libas does as well. It protects you. It safeguards you. For example, from the weather which is outside. It protects from defects that could be out there, from illnesses that could be out there. And last but not least, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses it metaphorically in reference to husband and wife. Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna. They are your garment and you are their garment. And that is also a very unique usage of the word libas. You and I just thought that libas was just this thing right here that you and I put on. The fancier it is, the better our presentation would be, and whatnot. We try to impress, wherever we have to, and there are certain places that you need to, and whatever the case may be. You come to masjid, you come to majalis, you come and you dress in a certain way. You go to work, you dress in a certain way. You go to work out, you dress in a certain way. But some people combine all 3 of these things. When they go to work, or go to majlis, or go to work, or go to exercise, it doesn't seem to matter to them that, all of these 3 places, they're able to combine the libas. Therefore, we see that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, uniquely, this unique concept of calling husband and wife to be what? To be libas of one another. That hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna. Those of you who have attended the marriage ceremonies that I have conducted especially, you may have heard this talk, so I apologize in advance if this is repetition to you, or if I have recited your nikah, you may have heard this talk as well. That how is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls husband and wife to be what? Libas of one another. With the background that I just gave you of libas being called layl, night, libas being called taqwa, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls husband and wife to be what? Libas of one another. That one of the features of this libas is that it protects your body from, the cold and the hot temperature. So when it's winter time, you dress accordingly and you put on enough libas so that you don't catch cold or you don't fall sick. So that's one purpose of this libas. When it gets hot during the summertime, keeping modesty in perspective, you dress accordingly. You don't see any heavy coats people coming out with, so that is according to the weather that they are dressing up. Obviously keeping modesty in perspective. And also, for example, one of the features of this libas is that it hides your bodily defects. Many people sitting over here, they've known me since I was 13 and 14-year-old. And I've grown up in front of them for the past 26, 27 years. They've seen me as a child grow up. But not one of them can say what bodily defects I have on my body. Maybe some of the friends that I grew up playing basketball and whatnot, maybe they would be able to, but not many of them would be able to because I have always kept some sort of libas on my body when I was in their presence. So what did this libas do? This libas, indirectly, basically hid all of my bodily defects from their eyes. Something that I don't want to, reveal to them or display to them. Therefore, this is such beauty that this libas has covered and kept it away from those onlookers. So that's one of the very important features of this libas. Another feature of this libas is that it serves as a decoration for you, a means of beautification for you. As I mentioned earlier, that for example, you're going to a job interview, you want to be presentable. For example, it's the day of your marriage, so you want to dress accordingly. When you come to Majlis al-Aza, you come accordingly. All of these areas, some places you're trying to decorate yourself and beautify yourself, and therefore this libas serves that purpose of beautification as well. Now look at how this comparison is between husband and wife. That all of these features, and there are so many other features that could be listed in reference to libas, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is comparing husband and wife to be libas of one another. The first feature, that it protects your body from hot and cold temperature, right? Husband and wife also serve as this meter for one another, where they're going to be protecting one another from hot and cold temperament. In a marital life, there are tempers that may flare. In a marital life, there may be arguments, ebbs and flows that you find. You ask all the seniors who are sitting back there, the successful formula for their marriage that they have lived for 50, 60 years of marriage. You go ahead and ask them the formula, and I see some chuckles, that how they've been able to survive or how they've been able to live with, a partner for such a long time. It definitely has give and take. It definitely requires compromise. It definitely requires, letting go of a few things before you can attain certain other things. And therefore, there isn't anyone big or small. There isn't anyone superior or inferior when it comes to this marital life. Otherwise, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have said that hunna libasun lakum libasul maslun fakhir wa antum libasun lahunna. For example, libas, which is inferior. He did not make any sort of discrimination between the two libas as far as husband and wife are concerned. In fact, called them to be equal as far as this libas is concerned. So therefore, we understand the rights and the huquq that are mentioned, and therefore, it's possible, and it's not bad to just give a couple of examples to newly married, that, you may expect something and you get something else. You may be expecting a nice smile or something, but you don't get that smile, for example, all the time. Therefore, this should not be the reason for you to go ahead and flip out and think that is it, that is end of the story, and nothing else could be done, and hence, you jump to that word of talaq, for example. No. This is where you need to calm yourself down. This is where you need to look into what it is that has caused this temporary, for example, change as far as the attitude is concerned. And it is very important to go ahead and find out the change in the attitudes. It is your job to go ahead and find out, to rectify if it is something which is coming from you. Otherwise, this is something which will linger on and becomes a snowball, and then obviously there's too late to turn around and look back into this. Imam Khomeini, he's a faqih, he was a faqih, he was, an arif, and alongside with that, rahbar of inqilab, alongside with that, he was a father. So one of the advices that his daughter recalls that her father gave at the time of her marriage, she said, and it's documented in the athar of Imam Khomeini, and the daughter has written this, that when I got married, my father came up to me and he said to me that, oh my daughter, it is possible that, your husband may shout at you, may yell at you for something that you may have done or may not have done. Both scenarios. You may or may not have done. He may shout at you, yell at you, get mad at you. But this is where you need to go ahead and control your anger and delay your response by 5 to 10 minutes. Because if you responded right away, it will only fuel the rage that he's in. Not only it will not have any effect on him, but it will actually make the case even worse. Therefore, delay your response by 10 minutes, because anger will not last more than 10, 12 minutes. Things will calm down. If he's a man of, rationalism, he will understand that, if there's a mistake that he has made. And after 10 minutes, you go ahead and tell him if there was a mistake on him, there will be something He will listen to you and there will be no further argument regarding that. But if you were to respond right away, on the spot, then obviously what will happen? You will see that it will only get worse and worse. She said, the irony was that my father went and said the same exact thing to my husband. That, oh my son-in-law, when one day if my daughter yells at you, shouts at you, gets mad at you, then delay your response by 5 to 10 minutes, and that way you'll be able to avert a bigger, calamity that is waiting to happen. So this is one of the ways that this libas protects your body. Temperaments flare. Another feature of this libas was that it hides your bodily defects. That's what taqwa is. It protects your body. Husband and wife become the same thing. That they go ahead and protect one another. They are going to be protection from falling into, ditch, falling into committing sins, making mistakes. This is where you both serve as partners in life to go ahead and protect one another. If you see one of the partners is doing something wrong, this is where you step up and you try to rectify that situation. Other features of the libas that I had mentioned, that, for example, it is a means of decoration for you. Husband and wife are also means of decoration for each other as a way of providing the next generation in the form of the children. That becomes the decoration. So that's as far as husband and wife are concerned. Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And a lot of time when we give the examples of Ma'sumin, and I could have easily given an example of Amirul Mu'mineen and Janab Fatmatul Zahra Salamullahi alayha over here. But these examples are sometimes taken for granted. They say, well, they were Ma'sumin. How could we ever follow, or how could we ever be like them, for example? But no, this is what they were forced to live. I don't want to use the word forced, but they lived a life like you and I, so that they could be a role model for us. If they were the figure of, some sort of imaginary figure, then obviously they would not have been able to serve the best role model for us. The fact that they lived a life like you and I do, requiring food and eating and, getting married and having children and going through ebbs and flows of the life, that's the best way that they could serve as role models for you and I. And therefore their examples are filled with so many things that you and I can adopt from. But obviously sometimes, because we look at it from the perspective that they were infallible and they were insani kamil, and obviously you and I are not kamil, and therefore it not be a good example to give. Next thing that Imam mentions, and moving forward quickly, he said, وَمَشْيُهُمُ التَّوَاضُ, that one of the attributes of muttaqeen is that their gait is with humbleness, that their walk is with humility, that when they walk, you see humbleness in their walk. There's a lot that you can learn from these ahadith as well as the ayat of Quran. Luqman, what does he say to his son? La tamshi ala al-ardi maraha. Do not walk on the earth exultantly, as if you are proud of something. You cannot, bring this earth down, and therefore don't walk with such pride that you do not possess. And therefore, one of the attributes of Ibadur Rahman was also in Surah Furqan, was yamshuna alal ardi hauna, that when they walk on earth, they walk, haun means lightly, leniently, without forcing themselves upon it. It is easy to tell. Psychologists, they'll tell you the way a person walks, the way a person talks, the way a person does certain things, they'll be able to tell you about the inner features of this individual. Just like the physicians, they will be able to tell you the physical illnesses. In certain cases, for example, if they were to see itchy skin or brown spots, that could be the sign of inability of the liver to function properly, for example. Yellow discoloration of the skin, mucous membrane, and the whites on the eyes are symptoms of, for example, jaundice. Darkness and dryness of the lips reflects on the inability of this heart to function properly. All of these, are the signs for physicians that by looking at these things, they're able to figure out what's happening inside, what's going on with the organs that are inside. Similarly, you and I are able to see if a person walks in certain way, talks in certain way, about the inner self of that individual. And therefore, one of the things that it leads to is arrogance and pride. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stops us from arrogance and pride. He says the first individual who committed the crime of arrogance and takabbur was shaitan. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ فَقَعَوْا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ, when I blew my soul into Adam and everybody was ordered to go into sajda, everybody did sajda, فَسَجَدَ الْمَلَائِكَةُ كُلُّهُمْ أَجْمَعُونَ إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. That except shaitan, except Iblis, he refrained from doing sajda. You've heard this story many times. But what ends up happening towards the end of this ayah is that Allah questions shaitan. Ma mana'aka, what kept you from doing sajda to Adam when it was my order, when it was my command? Astakbarta am kunta min al-aleen? Did you do istikbar? And you were always you thought that you were amongst those who are high in status? Qala ana khayrun minhu khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min teen. This was the entire discussion. He right away responded, the reason that I did not do sajda is because you created me from fire and you created Adam from clay, and definitely fire is better than clay. Therefore, how could fire prostrate in front of clay? Neglecting the fact that it is an order that has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to draw some conclusions from this. The first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls Hazrat Adam, he's Abul Bashar, that he is the father of the entire humanity. And therefore, when he blew his soul into Adam, and you and I are children of Adam, therefore that soul that he blew into Adam also exists in you and I. Now there could be many questions that may run in your mind. Then what happens to those who are evil in this world? Do they also have the soul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala running in them, and so on and so forth? But let's stay away from that discussion, and maybe I can, because that's not part of my discussion. But he says over here, very clear ayah, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, I blew my soul into Adam. And this was not used in a metaphorical sense that, that there's a lot of things are used metaphorically. In fact, I just gave you 3 examples of the word taqwa used metaphorically. So it was not used in the metaphorical sense. It was used in its literal sense. You and I, being the children of Adam, we are also inheriting that same soul from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore nothing decreases from that Wahidul Qahhar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. You look at it from the perspective, and the ulama of philosophers, they have explained this concept, that how it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's the creator, and us, the creation, something which is similar between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also something which is different between us and Him. Stay with me. I'll make it much easier. That which is the difference between us and Allah, let's say it's letter A. That which is similar between us and Allah is also letter A. So, well, how is that possible? If there are 2 things, if there's something which differentiates them, that could not be the thing which could be the cause of similarity between the 2. Why not? It's the nighttime right now, but during the daytime, what did you have? Sun up in the sky, right? Then you have this light which is illuminating this hall over here. What is common between the sun outside and this light inside? The light, the energy that have. And what is the difference between the 2? It's also the energy. It's just the intensity between the 2 is different. Because this lamp is only capable of illuminating what? This hall, and not beyond this hall. In fact, the hall next door, it cannot do anything to that. But whereas the sun, which is outside, illuminates the entire globe, entire universe, or entire earth at least. And therefore we see from this aspect that how there's a difference between those anwar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. that when they are able to pass this nur to others, definitely the intensity of those anwar that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created is different than our energy. For example, the mandur over here is the khilqat of the Holy Prophet and the Aimma Athar alayhimus salatu wassalam. Salawat Ji Muhammad. And how it does not decrease anything from them, and also more so from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, you get a candle. This candle, which is going to, if you were to light up a candle in this room, obviously will not be enough to illuminate the entire hall. But if you were to take that candle, before it runs out, maybe you can light up 100 other candles, right? You can use the same candle. You've seen it probably at the birthday parties, that when they're putting up the candle, they just take the one candle and then they light up the other candles with it as well. And therefore, it can illuminate the entire hall with that just one candle, illuminating all of the other hundreds of thousands of candles. Did anything decrease from the first candle? Nothing decreased from it. It is still intact. In fact, nothing decreased from it, but it was still able to go ahead and pass this nur to others and was able to make others illuminate as well. And that is the beauty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has inculcated in these ma'asumeen as well, that they're able to illuminate the hearts of others as well. Salawat Beji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So Shaitan made this comparison, and right away he did istikbar. Therefore, Imam is highlighting that aspect, وَمَشْيُعْهُمُ التَّوَاضُ, that muttaqeen are those that their walk, their gait is with humility and humbleness. That they don't have any bit of arrogance found in them. So if you see arrogance in someone or in yourself for that matter, let it be known that according to Amirul Mu'mineen, you have stepped out of the realm of taqwa. And a lot of time we see when we raise questions, Shaitan raised this question. He said, I didn't want to do sajda because I'm created of this and he's created of that. But how many times you and I also go ahead and question the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many times so subtly we have raised issues with the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Does that not reflect toward our arrogance towards Him? It does. We've shown this arrogance as well when we do not commit and submissively act on everything that He has asked us to do. There are many things that, may not make sense to you and I at the moment, because we're not complete human beings. And it requires a great deal for a person to become kamil. Therefore, we're still searching for results. But when someone has already searched for the results and has given you the hard work to go ahead and apply in your lives, the least you could do is continue to do your research. Go ahead and follow what this person has done. And I'm referring towards the maraji that they have done this hard work of extracting the laws from this book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as well as the books of ahadith, and produced it in a very simple format. Not simple, it could be difficult sometimes to understand, but in this format where you could just read and follow the instructions that are mentioned there. I say, well, no. Where does this say in Quran? You can go ahead and become mujtahid yourself, and you can go ahead and figure out where it says in Quran. Because not everything is mentioned in Quran. Yes, there is an ayat in Quran which says, Ma farratna, we did not leave anything out of this Quran. Wala ratbin, wala yabisin, illa fi kitabin mubin. There's not a wet and dry which has not been mentioned in Quran, but it still has to be extracted. And therefore there's this ability that Allah has given to you to go ahead and do that research and find out. So a lot of time when you mention a mas'ala to people, they'll question. Now this question is not out of arrogance. Maybe it is out of the ignorance that they have. They haven't been able to understand it. So I won't label it as arrogance. But a lot of time when they have been made to understand, as the ayat of Quran says, that bayyana has come to them, all of the proofs had come to them, yet still they resisted. This is where arrogance comes in. That when it has been explained to you thoroughly, that what this masala is. For example, very, very small example, and I'll move forward so I don't want to linger on this issue too long. For some people, it still does not make sense as to why wearing gold is haram for men, for example. I don't know, just top of my head. That it is okay for women to wear it, but it's not okay for men to wear it. Why, as Muslim men, you and I, it's haram for us to wear gold? Maulana, not even the wedding band? No, not the wedding band. Maulana, not even this, not even that. No, if it's not allowed, it's not allowed. Whether it's this or that. It's just forbidden, it's haram. What is the reason behind it? I don't know. But the one who created us knows best about us. Therefore, he decreed it to be haram for you. Therefore, refrain from it. Now, you can continue to do your research to find out the illat behind why it is haram, or why a certain other thing which impacts you is haram. But continue to follow as it has been commanded, so that at least you have not done what is injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where the concept of arrogance needs to be understood. That yes, while we talk about the example of shaitan showing this arrogance and takabbur and kibriyai in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by denying to do sajda to someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you and I sometime, by not being submissive completely to the commands of Allah, the Holy Prophet, and Aimma Athar, are we not showing a little bit of arrogance in ourselves as well? Salawat diji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Number 6, Imam says, غُضُّوا أَبْصَارَهُمْ عَمَّا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ وَوَقَفُوا أَسْمَاعَهُمْ عَلَى الْعِلْمِ النَّافِعِ. That they keep their eyes closed, these muttaqeen. Keep their eyes closed to what has been deemed haram for them to look at, and they put their ears to the knowledge which is beneficial to them. Imam talked about your tongue. He now refers towards your ability to see, and now he talks about your ability to hear. You see how in the very beginning of the attributes of muttaqin that Imam is mentioning, how beautifully he talked about something which is so common. Yes, he emphasized a great deal on mantiquhum as-sawab, that their mantiq, their speech is errorless, and did not, emphasize a great deal when it comes to looking and when it comes to hearing. What could be the reason? The reason is, we mentioned some of the afat of lisan last night or the nights before, that how it's so easy to commit a sin through this tongue which will affect others. But through the eyes and through the ears, sins that are committed may only affect your life and your soul only. It may not be something which is societal, ijtima'i, and therefore the causes of it and the effects of it may be very less. And that is how Imam ﷺ is emphasizing on each one of these. But when he says, غُضُّوا أَبْصَارَهُمْ عَنْ that which حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ, they refrain and they lower their gaze from that which has been made haram by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this concept of ghuddu, when you refer to Surah Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also speaks to mu'mineen and mu'minat when he says, قُلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَقُلِ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ. Tell the believing men to lower their gaze, and tell the believing women to lower their gaze as well. This concept talks about how Quran uses kinaya to go ahead and talk about a very important concept of hijab, both for men as well as for women. Now there is no need to go in the much details of it. This is a mas'ala which is already understood and we have gone through it many times, so I'm not going to talk about it further. But look how it is comparative with the ayat of Quran. That everything that Amirul Mu'mineen is telling us in this khutbah, you can easily relate to the ayat of Quran. As if when he's explaining these things, he's doing the tafsir of the Holy Quran. He said, غُضُّوا أَبْصَارُهُمْ عَمَّنْ that which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram. Because your ibadat will be incomplete if this ibadat is coupled with the haram which is being committed through your eyes. This ibadat will be incomplete if it is coupled with the haram which is being committed through these ears. A person shows up on the day of judgment in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he expects a bag full of good deeds. But what he sees, that his bag of good deeds is empty. He complains, "Oh Allah, all the good deeds that I had done, what happened to them?" He will be given a reminder. You did perform good deeds. But alongside with the good deeds, you were looking at haram and you were listening to haram. So every time you committed a sin, there was a zip that opened up in this bag of good deeds of yours and something fell out of it. And you were doing good and you were accumulating. But while you were coupling it with haram, every time you did something haram, something fell out of this bag of good deeds from you. And therefore, when you end up and stand up in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this empty bag with you. Therefore, when you couple good with haram, this is the result that you get out of it. Next thing that Imam mentions in this, and I'm going through it very quickly, he says, وَوَقِفُوا أَسْمَاعَهُمْ عَلَى الْعِلْمِ النَّافِعِ لَهُمْ. And they put their ears. Waqafu, that means they stop. Waqf means to stop. Those of you who have traveled to Arab countries, you see in the red stop sign, it says waqf on it, right? Now there's a waqf, which is waqf for the masjid, and that's something which has been endowed to the masjid. But then there's this waqf or waqif, which is from fi'l amr, which means to stop. Imam is saying muttaqeen are those who stop their ears to listen to the ilm which is beneficial to them. They don't tune out of it. Sometimes what happens is that we, as these ayam azab begin, we come with the expectation that this majlis has to be, for example, talking about the historical aspects. Yes, there are thousands and thousands of majalis that are happening in this ayam azab. And it would not be an understatement if you say hundreds of thousands of majalis that are happening. I was counting just a list of all the majalis that are happening in one city in Karachi. And there are 212 places where there's majlis happening. 212 in that one city. Well, someone sent me a list of all of the speakers that are speaking in Karachi. That's one city. And I'm sure that's the same case with other bigger cities in the world. Maybe in Punjab, in India, or other places. Hundreds and thousands of majalis are happening. And those who ascend this member, everyone is speaking about different things. That's the beauty of this azadari. That's the beauty of this institution. And with the help of internet these days, you're able to listen to whatever it is that you want to from across the globe. Someone is speaking on the other side of the globe, you're able to listen to them as well. So you see the variety of things that are being addressed. And the sa'i and the koshish and the work is that something that is delivered, obviously, along with the dhikr of Sayyid al-Shuhada and the masaib and the musibah that took place. You see that, musibat is what? It is repeated. Because we can't create new masaib. Some people try and create new masaib just to bring more intensity into making people cry, but you don't need to. The musibat of Sayyid al-Shuhada is as it is devastating. You don't need to make it more devastating. I was speaking at a place, there were some ladies who did not speak a word of English. But as soon as they hear Hussein and Masaib begin, they start crying. That's all that was needed for them. They did not need, going into the details of the Masaib, because Masaib are already in their heads. They've been listening to these Masaib for so many years. Many of you know Masaib better than I do, that I can deliver from the member, for example. You've heard them in much more details than I may be able to explain to you, for example. So Masaib part of the majlis is what? Which is repeated. And we take it as it is. Have you ever questioned, why do we have this reputation in this majlis? We called it the other night that this is a class, this is an institution, so you come for your spiritual growth. So therefore, if you're going to a class in your secular education, and if you're repeating something the next year, and the following year, and the following year, what does that tell you? That means you haven't been working hard enough and you're failing every year. And therefore you're made to repeat the same course over and over again until you pass it. So what is the reason why are we repeating? Have we not passed the course already? Have we not understood the examples of Sayyid al-Shuhada yet? Have we not heard the Masaib yet? Have we not understood them? Or why is it being repeated? I'll give you one ayat and one hadith to explain this concept. But have you ever questioned yourself? When a child starts their education from elementary school to middle school, to high school, to college, to postgraduate, they're continuously what? There's a progress that is happening in them. The progress is that the math that they were taught in elementary is not the same which is being taught in what? In their middle school or in their high school. The calculus that pre-cal that they took in their high school years, it gets more advanced when they enter, for example, university. So there's a constant progress that is happening, and you take that progress. But why is it that there isn't any progress? We're repeating the same things. No, this is where the fadail part of the majlis comes into play, that there's always the progress that is happening by the mention of different topics that are brought in front of you, where the masaib remain the same. When the masaib remain the same, I'll give the reason why we repeat them. In fact, you don't need to go further, but just look at the example of your wajibat. You've been praying since you became baligh. 5 prayers during the day that you have. Is there any difference? Except the fact that there are certain numbers that change. 1 is 2, 1 is 3, 1 is 4. But the same methodology. You read the same things. You do it in the same way. You do the sajda in the same way. You do the dhikr, tashahud, salam, everything. Tartib, muwalat, all of those things are repeated every single day. Have you ever questioned, why am I repeating this? When it comes to ibadat, it is okay to repeat it. Ibadat can be repeated over and over again. But as long as it is an ibadat. But if it becomes a habit, then obviously there's a different story. Therefore, the ayat of Quran says, مَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. We have not created human beings and jinn except that they may what? Worship. So the purpose of the creation of insan and jinn is what? Ibadat. To serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where this ibadat comes into play, where the Holy Prophet said, زَيِّنُوا مَجَالِسَكُمْ بِالذِّكْرِ عَلِي ibn Abi Talib. Embellish your gatherings with the dhikr of Ali. Do the dhikr of Ali. And you have given zinat to your majalis. If Rasulullah had stopped over here, would we not have taken his commands? Absolutely. But he wanted to give the reasoning behind it so that tomorrow nobody questioned. Why do the dhikr of Ali? فَإِنَّ ذِكْرَهُ ذِكْرِي. Because when you remember him, you remember me. وَذِكْرِي ذِكْرُ اللَّهِ. And when you remember me, you remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَذِكْرُ اللَّهِ ibadat. And the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ibadat. Therefore, when you do the dhikr of Ali, not only you embellish and give zina to your majalis, but you're also at the same time performing this ibadat for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat biji Muhammad wa This is where we look at the concept of ilm, which is beneficial. Our fifth Imam also talks about an alim. عالم ينتفع بعلمه أفضل من 70 عابد. An alim who benefits from his own knowledge is better than 70 worshippers. But on the contrary, Imam has also mentioned that an alim who does not benefit from his own knowledge, he's worse than some of the animals that Imam has mentioned. I won't even mention from the mimbar. So both sides are mentioned. I can sit on this mimbar. You may call me alim, but I'm talib ilm. And therefore, this little research that I did, I'm presenting it to you. But all this time that I'm saying to you, the muttaqeen are those, mantiquhum as-sawab, that their speech is flawless. Wa mashi'uhum at-tawadu. Their walk is with humility and humbleness. And they refrain their eyes from looking at that which is haram and all these things. So I have the knowledge of this. Yet I'm not acting upon this knowledge. He says, you are the worst of the mankind. Sharrul, that the worst of the human beings, the one who does not act upon their own knowledge. And to the extent that the Holy Prophet mentions when he ascended to Miraj, he saw a group of people who were hanging with their own lips. And Rasulullah asked Jibreel as to who are these people. Jibreel responded by saying, Khutaba ummat. These are the khutaba and the speakers of your ummah who did not act upon their own knowledge. يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ. They used to say things which they did not perform themselves. So the character was lacking in that which they were preaching from the minbar. So it's very important that a person who preaches is also acting upon that, because then it will have an effect on those who are listening, if it's not a role model in that sense. So one of the nemesis of ulama even, and this is a beautiful hadith from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. In Misbah al-Sharia, Imam talks about the humility is inherited from knowledge. The first thing which an alim inherits is what? Is humility, humbleness. As ilm increases, remember yesterday what we said? إِذَا تَمَّ الْكَلَامِ إِذَا تَمَّ الْعَقْلِ نَقْصِ الْكَلَامِ. When aql reaches its perfection, what happens? Kalam decreases. And therefore, one of the things that you gain out of it is what? Humbleness. You become humble. You show humility in front of Allah, but you become humble as a whole. And knowledge is the beam of marifat and faithful heart. One who is deprived of humbleness is not an alim. This is the words of our sixth Imam in the book Misbah al-Sharia. The one who's lacking humbleness is not an alim. He has split the hair in mutashabihat. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that only those who fear Allah, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ إِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءُ. That only those fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His ibad are those who are real ulama, scholars. And therefore humility and humbleness is there. But what is the nemesis of a scholar? 8 things Imam mentions. So you look for these things in me as well as in yourself, because you are also ulama. Ulama in different fields. And therefore you look for these things. If you're lacking these things, then obviously you're lacking from that aspect of taqwa that Imam is mentioning. He says what? He said there are 8 things which are the afat and nemesis of ulama. They are what? Greed, being miserly, vanity, prejudice, going after things which aren't in his reach. And this is the beauty. Imam says, وَالتَّزْيِينُ فِي تَزْيِينِ الْكَلَامِ بِالزَّوَائِدِ الْأَلْفَاظِ. This actually makes my case better. Unnecessary verbiage, excess in words and lafazi, which is not necessary, which is not needed. So that's why you see a lot of time that I'm unable to use the lafazi in my lectures, which is obviously my inability, but nothing against those who are able to and at the same time able to produce as well. False pride increased due to lack of fear from Allah and not acting upon his own knowledge. These are the nemesis of ulama. And therefore when Imam is talking about those who are muttaqeen, amongst the things that they are is that knowledge which they have adopted, they also act upon it as well. Salawat biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, I'll continue with more of these attributes of muttaqeen in this khutbah number 193 of Nahj-ul-Balagha. Has been the request from all of you from the day one. If it's possible on your way, if you could just go through the first few sentences of it, then obviously this discussion would be more enjoyable, that you'll understand what I'm speaking about ahead of time, and it'll be easy for us to understand. And there will be this interaction between us, inshallah, afterwards if you have any questions regarding this. But we see that Imam spoke of 2 things over here. He spoke about absar, the basar, the ability to see, and he spoke about the ability, asma, the ability to hear. Very many riwayat in this reference that kullu aynin bakat, every eye will be weeping except this eye. The eye which weeps for Sayyidul Shuhada, for example. In fact, some riwayat mention man baka wa abka khamsina. Whoever weeps and makes 50 people cry, wajaba lahul jannah. Man baka wa abka masalan ashara. Whoever cries and makes 10 people cry, وَجَبَ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ مَنْ بَكَى وَأَبْكَى وَاحِدًا. Whoever cries and makes one person weep for the gham of Sayyid al-Shuhada, وَجَبَتْ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. You see how easy this Jannat is been given as a reward just for shedding tears for Sayyid al-Shuhada. Min shurutiha, with shurutiha. There are conditions that are associated with it. But how easy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this concept for us. And that is the reason we call him what? Man sabaqat rahmatuhu ghadaba. The one whose rahmat exceeds his ghadab. You know, a person would say how difficult ahkam are. That, you know, how difficult it is for us to go through all the ahkam. Some people may say this. You know, we have to pray 5 times a day. We have to, you know, give khums. We have to perform hajj. We have to do sila rahim. We have to do this. We have to do that. Hukuk of this person. Hukuk of that person. So difficult. It's such a difficult life, for example, someone would say. Same words were uttered by a person, Hassan al-Basri, in the presence of our 4th Imam, near the Kaaba. He said, Al-ajabu kullu al-ajab mimman naja kayfa naja. I'm surprised at a person who succeeded. How was he able to succeed? So many difficulties in this life of ours. How can one be successful? Imam right away refuted his words and he says, Al-ajabu kullu al-ajab mimman halaka kayfa halaka. No, the surprising aspect is the person who perished. How did he perish? Ma'a sa'ati rahmatillah. With the wasi' rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man sabaqat rahmatuhu ghadaba. The one whose rahmat exceeds his ghadab. That every step of the way he's given you rahmat. There's rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all around you. The wujud of yours, your presence in this Pur Barakat Majlis is bringing this rahmat. And one tear that comes out of your eyes is capable of wiping off all of your sins. And I mentioned in the first majlis as well, not only that the maximum result of your actions is that, for example, you attain the paradise, but when you do tawassul to Sayyid al-Shuhada, not only you attain paradise, but you're able to bring others alongside with you as well. That's the benefit of it. And that's why the eye that weeps for Sayyid al-Shuhada is the eye will not weep on the day of judgment in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are in the 3rd night, and you heard the masaib of one of those individuals who left, when he left Kufa, with a different heart. But he recollects and he remembers that when he was leaving Kufa, he heard a voice from behind that, "Oh Hur, may you have the basharat, glad tidings of paradise." And Hur responded by saying, "What paradise? I'm going to go ahead and fight against the son of the Holy Prophet. There's no paradise in that." But there was this feeling, the heart was fertile for cultivation. The heart was there to take the nasihat if it was given. And that's where you understand the hikmat of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That at the maqam of Sharaf, where Imam camped, he said, get as much water as possible. Fill everything that you have with water, because we will need this water. Don't you think this is the hikmat of Imam Hussein? That he knows that there will be immediate need of water, therefore fill as much as you can. More than what you need right now. And then someone calls, I see trees in far distance. People who had traveled in that route, they said, we have traveled many times. By God, there aren't any trees in this neighborhood. He said, then what it is that we see? Very soon they were able to see the horses and the necks of the horses in large numbers coming toward them. Imam said, let's go to a place where we're able to defend ourselves. So they go to Dhu Hism, this wadi next door, next nearby, and they stand over there, they camp over there, so there's nothing behind them, and they're able to defend themselves. And this is, they were able to see the caravan of 1,000 strong, along in under the leadership of Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, are coming toward Imam Hussein. Imam holds his ground with his companions, but Imam sees a different scenario. Imam sees a different picture. That as these horsemen were approaching along with Hur, they were thirsty, and the thirst was obvious from them. Not only from the people, but also from their animals as well. So right away, Imam ordered, when he saw this situation, to his men, and this was the hikmat of Sayyid al-Shuhada, to fill enough water, more than that we need, to go ahead and provide water to these people. Go ahead and provide water even to the animals. There was a person by the name Ta'an. He was the last in this list of people to be given water. He said, I could almost see my death in front of my eyes due to the thirst and the extreme thirst that I had. And this is where only one person were mutawajjih towards me, and that was Sayyidul Shuhada. Imam himself got up from his place. He brings the water to this person. He makes him drink because he could not even drink the water himself. This is the Saqqai of Sayyidul Shuhada. And then Imam ﷺ tells her as to what is the reason that you are here. He said, I have the commands to bring you to Ibn Ziyad towards Kufa. Imam said, I'm not going to follow this command. I'm going to return back to Medina. He said, I'm not allowed to let you go back to Medina. And then there was this pact that was made between the two, that we will go in another direction, which is neither Kufa nor Medina, and we will go in that direction. It was time for Salat. This is where Imam realizes the characters. There is a character in Karbala by the name Umar as-Sa'ad. When Imam tries to tell him something, it does not have any effect on him. Imam tells him that you are waging this war because your Amir has promised you what? Shahr-e-Ray, that will be given to you as you commander of it. I tell you right now, by God, you will not be able to taste the grains of Shahr-e-Ray. He said, what about the grains? I'll go ahead and eat something else from that city. Imam was giving him a prophecy that you will never get to see that city. It's just a promise that has been made to you. But there was no way of penetrating the heart of Umar as-Sa'ad at that moment. But Imam sees that Hur has that ability. Therefore, Imam does things to Hur that he did not do to anyone else. Imam tells Hur that it is time for Salat. Are you going to go ahead and pray? He said, no, we're going to pray behind you. Hur stands behind Imam along with his people, and they go ahead and pray. As soon as the Salat was finished, Imam tells his people, let's get up. We have to move and we have to do harakat. As soon as Imam starts moving, Hur comes up and grabs the reins of the horse. Imam says to him, Thaqalatka ummuk ya Hur. What is it that you want? May your mother sit in your grief. What is it that you want? Hur responds, this was the second arrow that Imam had thrown toward Hur, knowing that Hur has the ability to take it. He said, if it was someone else who had said this regarding my mother, I would have responded in the same way. But how could I respond to someone whose mother is Sayyidatun Nisa'il Alameen? So I cannot say the same thing back to you. Imam had said this for a purpose. Hur said, you have to come with me. And then they agreed to go in this third direction. And when they went in that third direction, Imam ﷺ arrives at the place, that place where Imam changed several of his horses, but none wanted to move forward. Imam asked the local people, what is this place called? Some said it is called Ghadariya. Imam said, is there another name? They said it is called Nainawa. Imam said, is there another name? They said it's called Shati al-Furat. Imam said, is there another name? They said, yes, it's called Karbala. Imam said, Ha huna karbun wa bala. Yes, indeed, this is Karbala, the same place where I will be killed, where my children will be killed, where my family will be taken as asir. This was the place that had been promised promised. That goes, Imam enters into the city of Karbala, buys that land from the people of that place, gives it back to them, saying that when we are killed, make sure that those who come for our ziyarat, you feed them for 3 days. Look at the sakhawat of Sayyid al-Shuhada, that even after his shahadat, he's making sure the zawar are not hungry. Imam is making sure the one Imam who was hungry and thirsty for 3 days, he makes sure that those who come for his ziyarat are not left thirsty or hungry. Ajrukum Allah. May Allah give you no grief except the grief and sorrow of Ahlul Bayt. Comes the day of Ashur, the night of Ashur, when Hur, he's in istirab, he sees himself, Ukhayyiru bayna Jahannam, I see myself between hell and heaven. I see myself choosing between heaven and hell. And this is where someone looks at Hur and says, if someone asked me who was the greatest warrior of Kufa, I would not hesitate to say Hur. But how do I see you in this form? He said, I see myself choosing between heaven and hell. And this is where Hur makes his way towards the camp of Imam Hussein. He arrives with his son Bukair. They come and they bow down to Imam. Oh Hussein, is there a way for tawbah for me? Imam said, Irfa rasak, get up. Who is this? He said, this is Hur, the same person who deprived you of water, who brought you to this land. You could have gone away, but it is me who brought you over here. Imam says, oh Hur, we forgive you. Hur then asked Imam for the permission to be the first to give his life for the sake of Sayyidul Shuhada. Imam says, oh Hur, you have just arrived. It is our hospitality. Let us serve you. How can we let our guests go right away? He said, oh Imam, there's no way for me to face you in this situation. Hur sends his son Bukair towards Maqtal. Bukair goes, sacrifices himself. When he calls upon his father, Hur goes out, wants to pick up the body of his son. Imam says, oh Hur, stay. I will go pick up the body of your son. You will not be able to bear picking up the body of your young son. I say, Sayyid al-Shuhada, oh Hussein, you are picking up Bukair's body. Very soon, Ali Akbar will come to ground. على لعنة الله القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, deal with us on the day of judgment with your mercy and not justice. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our weighted Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhir da'wana Hussein.